"You can ask to move," the alien girl said before Nathan Cole had even stopped beside row 24. Her voice was quiet, practiced, the kind of sentence a person learned from having to say it too many times. Nathan checked the boarding assignment glowing on his wrist terminal. 24B. Then he looked at the empty aisle seat. "Why?" he asked. "24B is mine." The Saelari woman stared at him. She sat in 24A beside the window, sapphire turquoise skin catching the pale cabin lights. Silver-white hair framed a face that was beautiful without looking human. Her golden eyes held 3 dark curved pupils, and thin sensory membranes rested along both temples where human ears would have been. Faint biological lines glowed across her cheekbones and disappeared beneath the collar of a dark travel coat. Nathan had already watched 3 passengers reach this row and decide they had somewhere better to be. One man checked his ticket twice, glanced at her, then continued down the aisle. A couple quietly asked the attendant whether they could sit separately. Another passenger had placed his bag in 24B before apparently discovering a sudden interest in the rear cabin. Nathan had assumed there was something wrong with the seat. Now he understood the problem was sitting beside it. He put his refrigeration tool case beneath 24B and lowered himself into the chair. The restraint clicked across his waist. The Saelari woman moved closer to the window. Her coat pulled away from the shared armrest before his sleeve could touch it. "There are other seats," she said. "Probably. The attendant would move you." Nathan adjusted the air nozzle above him. "I just sat down." Her sensory membranes tightened. "You know what I am?" He looked at her. "Saelari." "Yes." "Then I am having an unusually successful morning." She blinked. Nathan opened the refrigeration maintenance report he had promised himself he would finish during the flight. The document contained 90 pages of compressor tolerances, coolant loop inspections, and enough administrative language to make 6 hours of interstellar travel feel short. Beside him, the woman remained rigid. Nathan noticed she was leaving the entire armrest untouched. He drew an invisible line across its center with one finger. "Your half. My half." International treaty. Her golden eyes shifted toward him. "Interstellar." Nathan nodded seriously, already improving the document. Something almost became a smile. "Almost." "Alara Venn," she said after a moment. "Nathan Cole." A passenger in 23C turned around. Human male. Maybe 50. He leaned toward Nathan and lowered his voice. "There is an open seat farther back." Nathan looked up. "I already unpacked emotionally." The man frowned. His eyes moved toward Alara. "You know what she is?" Nathan glanced at the illuminated seat marker beside the window. 24A. Silence. The man stared at him, apparently waiting for the rest. Nathan put one headphone over his ear and returned to the report. Eventually, the passenger turned around. Nathan did not look at Alara immediately. He could feel her watching him. The horizon veil began departure procedures. Overhead lights dimmed. Ventilation shifted. A deep mechanical hum traveled through the floor as docking systems released. Alara finally rested one blue hand near the shared armrest, though not on it. "Why did you say that?" she asked. Nathan scrolled to the next page. "Say what?" 24A. "That is where you were sitting." "You know what he meant." Nathan looked at her then. "Yes." "And?" The restraint indicator changed from amber to green. Nathan leaned back as the liner eased away from Titan relay. "And 24B is still my seat." Alara stared at him while stars began sliding across the window behind her. Nathan returned to his report. He did not know why everyone had avoided her. He did not know what stories they had heard or whether any of them were true. He only knew his ticket had placed him beside a stranger, and nothing about that seemed complicated enough to require standing up. For Nathan, the empty seat had simply been his. For Alara, the sound of him fastening the restraint had already meant something far larger. 40 minutes after departure, Nathan had learned 3 things about Alara Venn. She preferred the window shade halfway open. She read faster than anyone he had ever seen, and she still treated the shared armrest like disputed territory. Her blue hand would move toward it, stop, then retreat to her lap. Nathan pretended not to notice. The horizon veil had settled into cruise, and the cabin carried the familiar mechanical rhythm of long-distance travel. Ventilation whispered overhead. Coolant pumps sent a faint vibration through the deck. Beyond the window, Titan relay had disappeared into the dark. Nathan was halfway through a refrigeration inspection report when the cabin cooling system changed pitch. He noticed immediately. The compressor pulse deepened, followed by a short increase in airflow from the overhead vents. Normal transition into cruise cooling. Saelari reacted as if it were not normal at all. Her sensory membranes folded tightly against her temples. Her shoulders stiffened. The biological lines along her cheeks dimmed. Nathan lowered his tablet. Too cold. No. Another cooling pulse moved through the vent. Saelari closed her eyes. Her fingers tightened around the edge of her seat. Nathan listened. The airflow itself was ordinary, but the compressor vibration was traveling through the cabin panel in a low repeating frequency. He felt it through the seat frame when he rested 2 fingers against the armrest support. That, he asked. Saelari opened her eyes. You can feel it. Barely. For Saelari, barely is louder. Nathan pressed the attendant control. Saelari immediately looked toward him. You do not need to do that. Probably true. Nathan. Also too late. A cabin attendant arrived. Nathan pointed toward the overhead vent. Could you reduce the local cooling pulse over 24A? Cabin temperature is within standard range. Temperature is fine. Compressor resonance is carrying through the panel. The attendant checked the environmental control display. No system warning. Nathan nodded. I am not reporting a failure. I am asking for less local airflow. The attendant looked at Saelari. Would that help? Saelari hesitated. Yes. The vent output decreased. A few seconds later, the vibration softened. Saelari's grip on the seat loosened. Her sensory membranes slowly opened again. Better? Nathan asked. Much. Good. He thanked the attendant and reopened his report. Saelari stared at him. What? He asked. You noticed. Refrigeration pays my rent. Most humans cannot detect that frequency. I did not. I noticed you reacting to it. Saelari became quiet. Nathan returned to the report, but she continued watching him. You did not touch me. He looked up again. Was I supposed to? No. Excellent. I accidentally followed protocol. The faintest smile appeared. This time it stayed. Nathan scrolled another page. Several minutes passed before Saelari finally placed her hand on the shared armrest. Exactly on her half. Nathan noticed and kept his elbow where it was. Your treaty appears functional, she said. Historic diplomatic achievement. You have done nothing. Those are often the most successful negotiations. Her sensory membranes lifted slightly. A service cart moved down the aisle. Nathan ordered coffee. Saelari chose water. When the attendant handed over the drinks, the passenger in 23C glanced back again. His eyes moved from Nathan to Saelari, then toward the rear cabin. Nathan ignored him. Saelari did not. Her hand began to retreat from the armrest. Nathan placed his coffee on his tray table and continued reading as though nothing had happened. After a moment, her hand stopped moving. You know he is still watching, she said quietly. Then I hope he enjoys refrigeration reports. You really do not care? Nathan considered the question. About him watching? No. About sitting here? I care that the seat reclines approximately 2 inches less than advertised. Saelari laughed softly. Nathan smiled without looking away from his tablet. Outside the window, the stars remained cold and distant. Inside row 24, nothing dramatic had happened. A vent had been adjusted. A vibration had softened. 2 strangers had divided an armrest. Yet Saelari's hand remained where she had placed it, occupying the half that had always been hers. The horizon veil had been in cruise for nearly 2 hours when the cabin lights softened into evening mode. Nathan closed his refrigeration report at page 61 and decided the remaining pages had committed enough crimes against readable language for one day. Saelari noticed immediately. You surrendered. Strategic withdrawal. Humans have many phrases for quitting. We are an adaptable species. Her sensory membranes lifted slightly. A meal cart moved slowly through the cabin, filling the air with warm bread, coffee, and something Nathan suspected had once been vegetables. He lowered his tray table. Saelari selected a Saelari-compatible meal and another packet of water. The attendant moved on. Across the aisle, a passenger glanced toward Saelari before shifting his own tray several inches away. Nathan saw it. Saelari saw it too. She continued opening her meal as if neither had noticed. How many times? Nathan asked. Her golden eyes turned toward him. How many times what? You said I could ask to move before I even sat down. Saelari's biological markings dimmed. For a moment, Nathan thought she would refuse to answer. 11 trips, she said. Across 11 systems. And her gaze moved towards seat 24B. There is always an empty seat. Nathan stopped opening his coffee. Alara folded the corner of her meal wrapper with careful blue fingers. 4 years ago, a passenger ship near the Carina route reported biological contamination in its ventilation system. Several travelers developed respiratory irritation. A Saelari family was aboard. Nathan remembered fragments of the story. Headlines. Health warnings. Then something else weeks later that received far less attention. They blamed your skin microbiome. At first. But that was wrong. Alara looked at him more sharply. You remember the correction? Agricultural cargo, right? Fungal proteins from a damaged cultivation container. Her sensory membranes relaxed a fraction. The investigation proved it. Medical authorities cleared Saelari passengers. Transport restrictions were removed. Nathan looked around the cabin. But people kept the first version. Fear travels faster than corrections. Her voice carried no anger. Only exhaustion. Most passengers will not say anything directly. They request another row. They stand longer than necessary. They suddenly discover friends in other sections. She glanced at 24B. Sometimes the seat stays empty for the entire trip. Nathan looked down at the chair beneath him. Same padding. Same restraint. Same inadequate legroom. Your streak is over. Alara studied his face. You make it sound trivial. The seat is trivial. Not to me. Nathan nodded. I am starting to understand that. Silence rested between them while the ventilation system whispered overhead. Alara took a drink of water. Why did you sit here? Ticket. Nathan. 24B. That explains why you sat down. It does not explain why you stayed. He looked at her. The question was different now. No joke would completely answer it. Nathan glanced toward the passenger in 23C, then toward the rear cabin where several open seats remained. Because leaving would mean agreeing there was a reason to leave. Alara became perfectly still. Nathan continued before the moment grew too heavy. Also, my knees finally stopped hurting. For half a second, she stared at him. Then she laughed. A real laugh this time, warm and sudden. Her sensory membranes opened fully, and the pale biological markings along her cheeks brightened beneath the cabin lights. Nathan smiled and returned to his meal. You ruined the sentence, she said. Improved it. It was almost profound. Dangerous condition. I corrected it quickly. Alara shook her head. Several rows ahead, a child turned around and stared openly at her sensory membranes until his father gently redirected him. Alara did not shrink toward the window this time. She simply continued eating. Nathan noticed her elbow resting comfortably on her half of the shared armrest. What do you do, he asked. For work. Unless you have another 11-system hobby. Acoustic cartography. Nathan raised an eyebrow. You map structures with sound? Vibration, resonance, pressure return. Mostly subterranean infrastructure. So those membranes are useful. Alara's expression changed slightly. Nathan realized how the sentence might sound. Not that you needed to be useful for me to sit here. Her eyes held his. I know. The answer came quietly. Nathan looked down at 24B. 2 hours earlier, it had been the seat nobody wanted. Now it held a tired refrigeration engineer eating questionable vegetables beside an acoustic cartographer who had finally stopped making herself smaller. Outside the window, stars drifted silently past. Inside, the empty seat had already begun losing the meaning everyone else had given it. 2 hours and 40 minutes in a cruise, Alara stopped eating. Nathan noticed because her sensory membranes changed before anything else did. They lifted away from her temples in a single smooth motion, thin translucent edges turning toward the floor. Her golden eyes lost focus. What? Nathan asked. Alara raised one blue hand. Quiet. Nathan obeyed. Around them, the horizon veil sounded exactly as it had for the last hour. Ventilation whispered overhead. Coolant circulated behind the cabin wall. Engines sent a steady harmonic through the deck. Meal trays clicked softly. Passengers talked in low voices. Then Alara tilted her head. There is another frequency. Nathan set his coffee down. Where? Below us. Forward and slightly toward the center line. He placed his palm against the floor beside 24B. At first he felt nothing unusual. Then the refrigeration system entered another compressor cycle. A faint vibration traveled through the deck. Smooth. Familiar. Half a second later came a second pulse, weaker and uneven. Nathan frowned. Again, Alara's sensory membranes remained fully extended. Every compressor cycle. Nathan waited. The main harmonic returned. Then the smaller vibration followed it like an echo that had arrived late. That should not be there, he said. Alara looked at him. You feel it? Now I do. He pressed the attendant control. The cabin attendant arrived moments later. Is there a problem? Probably a maintenance issue, Nathan said. There is an irregular vibration tracking the refrigeration return cycle near row 24. The attendant checked the cabin panel. Environmental systems show normal. Temperature can be normal while amount is not. Nathan pointed toward the floor. Could you have engineering check the secondary return line? Alara spoke quietly. The vibration begins after the compressor pulse and decays unevenly. The attendant looked at her sensory membranes, then at Nathan. You both detected it? Nathan nodded. She detected it. I confirmed enough to annoy somebody in engineering. The attendant almost smiled. I will call them. 10 minutes later, a maintenance technician arrived carrying a compact vibration scanner. Nobody was moved. No alarm sounded. The technician checked the deck near 24A, then 24B. A small amber indicator appeared. He repeated the scan. Interesting. Nathan leaned toward the aisle. Return line isolator? Possibly. The technician opened a service panel farther forward and scanned again. Loose vibration isolator on the secondary refrigeration return. Nathan nodded. That would explain the delayed harmonic. Alara watched carefully. Is it dangerous? Not currently, the technician said. The coupling is stable, but continued vibration would increase where over time. He entered a command on his diagnostic unit. The secondary loop reduced load. The irregular pulse faded from the floor. Alara felt it disappear before Nathan did. Her sensory membranes relaxed. Gone. Nathan waited for the next compressor cycle. Smooth. No echo. Gone, he agreed. The technician looked at Alara. Good catch. Her biological markings brightened slightly. I only noticed it. That is usually how maintenance starts. Nathan pointed at the technician. Finally, someone understands my profession. The technician laughed and closed the service panel. Nearby passengers had heard enough to know what happened. The man in 23C turned around. His expression was different now. She heard that through the floor? Nathan looked at Alara. Felt it. Alara nodded. Saelari's sensory membranes detect low-frequency resonance. The man studied her for a moment. Useful on a ship. Nathan saw Alara's markings dim almost imperceptibly. He understood why. Useful everywhere, probably, he said, then added. But she was allowed to sit here before any of us knew that. The passenger looked uncomfortable. He turned forward without arguing. Alara stared at Nathan. You did not need to say that. Probably not. Then why? Nathan picked up his coffee. Because he was starting the story in the wrong place. Her sensory membranes shifted. Where does it start? Nathan looked at 24B. With me sitting down. Alara became quiet. Around them, meal service resumed. The refrigeration system continued cycling normally, its vibration now clean and steady beneath their feet. Nothing dramatic had happened. No emergency. No rescue. A small mechanical problem had been noticed early because Alara felt something unusual and Nathan believed her enough to ask someone to check. Yet when the elderly passenger across the aisle looked toward Alara a few minutes later, she did not look away. She simply nodded. Alara returned the gesture. Then she rested her hand on the shared armrest again, using every inch of the half that belonged to her. The cabin returned to normal so quickly that the loose vibration isolator became just another maintenance note before Nathan finished his coffee. That seemed to bother Alara more than he expected. She kept glancing toward the floor, then toward the passengers who had watched the technician leave. You expected something else? Nathan asked. I do not know. Applause. Absolutely not. Good. I was not prepared. Her sensory membranes shifted with amusement. A few minutes later, the attendant announced that maintenance needed temporary access to a service panel beside row 22. 3 passengers were asked to move until the inspection was complete. The elderly human woman across the aisle gathered her meal tray and looked for somewhere to sit. The attendant pointed toward a fold-down auxiliary seat near row 24, directly beside Alara's side of the aisle. Nathan saw the woman pause. It lasted perhaps 1 second. Alara saw it too. Her shoulders tightened automatically. Then the woman crossed the aisle and sat down. Hope you do not mind, she said. Alara blinked. No. Thank you. My dinner is getting cold. She opened her tray and immediately frowned at the contents. Although perhaps that would improve it. Nathan looked over. Independent review suggests the vegetables are beyond help. The woman laughed. Saelari did too. That was all. No speech. No apology. No announcement that anyone had changed. Just 3 passengers eating dinner within a few feet of one another while the horizon veil continued toward Concordia Prime. Saelari kept glancing at the woman as though waiting for the moment she would remember where she was sitting. The moment never came. When maintenance finished, the attendant told the elderly passenger she could return to her original row. In a minute, the woman said, I am comfortable. Saelari's biological markings brightened. Nathan pretended to be deeply interested in his meal. Your empty seat business model is collapsing, he said quietly. Saelari turned toward him. You think this is funny? A little. She avoided looking at me earlier. People are inconsistent. That is a generous description. Nathan nodded. I am having a generous day. The elderly woman finished eating and looked toward Saelari. Those membranes really detected the refrigeration vibration. Yes. Do they hear sound? Not exactly. They respond to pressure changes and low-frequency resonance. Interesting. The woman nodded as though Saelari had explained how a thermometer worked. Then she returned to her meal. Saelari watched her. There, Nathan said. What? Conversation. Dangerous precedent. Her sensory membranes opened fully. Farther forward, a child turned around and stared at Saelari's temples. His father immediately whispered something and tried to redirect him. Saelari surprised both of them by smiling. You can ask, she said. The child looked at his father, received permission, then asked, Can you feel the engines? Yes. All the time. Most of the time. Is it annoying? Saelari considered. Sometimes humans are louder. Nathan placed a hand over his chest. Unprovoked attack. The child laughed before his father guided him forward again. Saelari looked down at her hands. What if this only changed because I was useful? Nathan stopped joking. For some of them, maybe it did. Her markings dimmed slightly. Then what changed? Their excuse. That is not better. No. Nathan set down his fork. You should not have needed to find a mechanical problem before someone decided sitting near you was safe. Saelari looked at him. You did not. No. Why? Nathan glanced at 24B. Because I met you before I met whatever story they had about you. The elderly woman had apparently heard him. She folded her tray and looked directly at Saelari. For what it is worth, I should not have needed the maintenance report either. Saelari became very still. The woman gave a small, embarrassed smile. I am sorry. No explanation followed. Saelari nodded slowly. Thank you. The woman returned to her original row. Nathan leaned back. Around them, the cabin continued with ordinary sounds. Ventilation, dishes, quiet conversation, the steady refrigeration hum beneath the floor. Another passenger passed through the aisle without widening the distance around Saelari. Someone asked her to move a water packet from the edge of the tray cart. Nobody congratulated themselves. Nobody applauded. The change was small enough to miss if Nathan had not been watching for it. Saelari rested her blue hand on her half of the armrest, no longer measuring the space before taking it. She had noticed a vibration and helped the crew find a maintenance problem. That was useful. But the more important thing had happened hours earlier, before she had proven anything at all. One human had looked at an empty seat, sat down, and treated her dignity as something that did not require evidence. The Horizon Veil entered its final cruise segment with a little more than 3 hours remaining before Concordia Prime. Most of the cabin had gone quiet. Meal trays were gone. Reading lights glowed above scattered rows. The refrigeration system beneath the floor now carried a clean, even harmonic after engineering reduced load on the secondary loop. Saelari noticed the difference every time the compressor cycled. Nathan noticed that she no longer braced for it. Her sensory membranes rested open along her temples, and her blue hand occupied its half of the armrest without hesitation. Nathan closed his report. Finished? She asked. I reached page 74 and decided the remaining 16 pages should learn independence. You are abandoning professional responsibility. I prefer delegating to tomorrow. Saelari smiled. Beyond her window, the stars were beginning to shift as the liner adjusted course toward Concordia Prime. Nathan, yes. I keep thinking about what you said. That is usually where trouble begins. About meeting me before meeting the story about me. Nathan waited. Alara looked toward the rows ahead. Most passengers do not think they are being cruel. Probably not. They think they are being cautious. Her biological markings dimmed slightly. That makes it harder to explain why it hurts. Nathan leaned back. Fear likes respectable clothes. Alara turned toward him. That almost sounded profound. Do not spread it around. Her sensory membranes lifted with amusement. Silence settled between them for several seconds. Then Alara asked, "If you had known the rumor before boarding, would you still have sat here?" Nathan considered it. "I knew part of it. But not that I was Saelari. I have functioning eyes. You know what I mean." He nodded. "Yes." "Why?" Nathan looked at the seat marker. "Because the investigation cleared Saelari passengers. People ignore corrections. I inspect refrigeration systems. If the diagnostic evidence says a compressor is fine, I do not replace it because someone heard a rumor in a terminal." Alara stared at him. "You are comparing my species to refrigeration equipment. I am having difficulty finding examples outside my professional range." She laughed. Nathan smiled. Then his expression softened. "Evidence matters. But even without the report, I could have asked you instead of deciding for you." Alara looked down at the armrest between them. "Nobody asks." "They should." The cabin speaker chimed softly. Arrival preparation would begin in 90 minutes. Passengers stirred. Window shades opened. Bags shifted beneath seats. The man in 23C turned around once more. This time he looked directly at Alara. "Excuse me." Her sensory membranes tightened automatically, then relaxed. "Yes. My son is studying acoustic engineering." He gestured carefully toward her temple membranes. "Would it be rude to ask how those detect vibration?" Alara blinked. "Not if you asked before touching them." "I definitely was not planning to touch them." Nathan looked up from his tablet. "Strong opening position." The man laughed awkwardly. Alara explained that Saelari sensory membranes responded to pressure gradients and low-frequency resonance transmitted through air and solid surfaces. The man listened. No suspicion, no careful distance, just curiosity. When he turned forward again, Alara remained quiet. "That was different," she said. He discovered conversation. "You make everything sound simple. Most difficult things are made of simple things repeated badly." She studied him. "And simple things repeated well." Nathan looked around the cabin. The elderly woman across the aisle was asleep. A child several rows ahead was drawing something on a tablet. Passengers moved through the aisle without changing course around row 24. Maybe they become habits. Alara followed his gaze. The pale markings along her cheeks brightened. 11 systems, she said. 11 trips with an empty seat. Nathan tapped 24B. Technically occupied. Very occupied. I have broad shoulders. And terrible knees. Finally, cultural understanding. Alara laughed again. The arrival lights of Concordia Prime appeared beyond the window as distant white points. Nathan expected her to become quieter as the journey neared its end. Instead, she seemed lighter. She no longer watched every passenger who passed. She no longer pulled her coat away from the aisle. When the attendant came through checking restraints, Alara spoke first and asked about the connection schedule. Ordinary question. Ordinary answer. Nathan realized that was the change he trusted most. She was no longer measuring every interaction for rejection before it happened. What happens when we land? Alara asked. I collect my tool case. After that, Nathan considered. There is supposedly decent coffee in the Concordia terminal. Her 3 dark pupils narrowed inside her golden irises. Is that an invitation? It is quality control. You are a refrigeration engineer. Standards are standards. Her sensory membranes opened fully. Then I suppose you need an independent observer. Nathan nodded. For scientific integrity. Outside, Concordia Prime grew brighter against the dark. Inside row 24, the armrest remained divided exactly in half. Neither of them had discussed the treaty again. They no longer needed to. The horizon veil touched down at Concordia Prime with a soft mechanical shudder that traveled through the cabin floor and disappeared almost immediately. Alara's sensory membranes lifted at the vibration, then relaxed. Landing gear, Nathan said. I know. Just demonstrating professional awareness. Refrigeration engineer. Mechanical systems share custody of my attention. The restraint indicators changed from amber to green. Around them, passengers began standing before the aisle had any reasonable chance of moving. Nathan remained seated. Alara looked at him. Your knees? finally receiving the respect they deserve. She smiled. The elderly woman across the aisle retrieved her travel bag and paused beside row 24. Safe travels, she told Alara. You too. The woman nodded toward Nathan. And thank you both for mentioning that vibration. Nathan pointed toward Alara. She found it. Then thank you, the woman said. Alara's biological markings brightened softly. You are welcome. No awkward pause followed. The woman simply joined the departing passengers. The man in 23C turned around next. Nathan expected nothing, which made the moment easier. My son will probably spend the next month asking about Saelari acoustic sensing, the man said. Alara's sensory membranes opened slightly. Tell him pressure gradients are more interesting than engines. I will. He hesitated. And I am sorry about earlier. Alara looked at him. Thank you. The man nodded and left. Nathan did not comment. Some moments improved when nobody explained them afterward. When the aisle finally cleared, Nathan pulled his tool case from beneath 24B. Alara stood without waiting for anyone else to move first. Her coat brushed the shared armrest. She did not notice. Nathan did. They followed the remaining passengers into Concordia Prime Terminal, where white structural arches curved over enormous windows facing the planet below. Transit announcements echoed through the concourse. Luggage drones rolled between travelers. Warm air smelled faintly of coffee and recycled humidity. Quality control, Alara said. Nathan looked toward a cafe near the observation deck. You remembered. I take scientific obligations seriously. They ordered drinks and found a table beside the glass. Nathan chose black coffee. Alara selected a pale green Saelari compatible infusion. Four chairs surrounded the table. She sat without checking which ones were empty. Nathan took the one opposite her. Better than ship coffee? She asked. He tasted it. Low standard, but yes. Your investigation is complete. One sample is irresponsible. Of course. They talked for nearly an hour. Not about contamination rumors. Not about passengers. Alara described acoustic maps of underground water channels and transit tunnels. Nathan complained about cold storage compressors designed by engineers who apparently hated maintenance technicians. She laughed often now, without looking around afterward. Eventually, their terminals chimed with connection notices. Nathan had a refrigeration inspection contract in the Western Industrial District. Alara's mapping assignment was in the Northern Geological Sector. Different trains, different platforms. So this is where Passenger 24A disappears, Nathan said. Passenger 24B seems difficult to get rid of. Occupational persistence. Alara looked toward the transit gates. Her markings dimmed slightly, but not with fear. How long are you on Concordia? 3 weeks. Her golden eyes returned to him. 23 days. Suspiciously similar. Possibly poor planning. Nathan stood and lifted his tool case. Coffee comparison requires additional data. Alara's sensory membranes opened. Are you suggesting a second experiment? Scientific integrity. Tomorrow. Nathan nodded. Tomorrow. They walked together until the concourse divided. Before turning toward her platform, Alara stopped. Nathan. Yes. When I boarded the Horizon Veil, I expected 24B to stay empty. He looked at her. Terrible prediction. Apparently. She smiled. I am glad I was wrong. Nathan wanted to answer with something clever. Nothing arrived, so he gave her the simplest truth. Me too. Alara walked toward the northern platform. Nathan headed west. After several steps, he looked back. She was moving through the crowd without making herself smaller, without watching strangers for the moment they might move away. Nobody in the terminal knew what seat she had occupied aboard the Horizon Veil. Nobody knew why the chair beside her had once mattered. For the first time, Nathan thought that forgetting the empty seat might be the best possible ending for it. 3 weeks passed faster than either of them mentioned. Nathan spent his days inside Concordia Prime cold storage facilities, inspecting compressor arrays, coolant loops, and refrigeration systems large enough to keep entire agricultural districts supplied. Alara spent hers beneath the Northern Geological Sector, mapping buried transit corridors and underground water channels through resonance. Most evenings, they met somewhere between. Coffee became dinner. Dinner became walks through the terminal gardens. Neither gave the routine a name. On the 22nd evening, they boarded a commuter shuttle toward Concordia Central after visiting an observation deck above the Northern District. Alara entered first. 7B, she said, checking her assignment. Nathan looked at his 8C. Her sensory membranes tilted toward him. Transportation has separated us again. A clear institutional failure. Alara smiled and took the window seat. 7C remained empty beside her. Nathan placed his tool case beneath 8C and sat one row behind. Boarding continued. A middle-aged human woman reached row 7 carrying a work bag and a cup of coffee. She checked her assignment, looked at 7C, then sat down. Nothing else happened. No hesitation. No glance toward the attendant. No careful inspection of Alara. The woman secured her restraint, placed her coffee in the holder, opened a news feed, and began reading. Nathan stared for several seconds. Alara had noticed too. One sensory membrane angled slightly backward toward him. Nathan smiled. She turned forward again. The shuttle doors closed. During departure, the woman beside Alara continued reading. 10 minutes later, her coffee lid refused to seal properly. Alara noticed a drop forming near the edge and handed her a napkin. "Thank you," the woman said. "You are welcome." That was the entire conversation. Nathan found it strangely perfect. The woman did not know about the horizon veil. She did not know Alara had detected a loose refrigeration isolator. She did not know about 11 systems, 11 trips, or all the passengers who had preferred standing to sitting beside a Saelari. She knew only that seat 7C was assigned to her, so she occupied it. Halfway through the ride, a child across the aisle noticed Alara's sensory membranes. "Do those move?" he asked. His father immediately looked embarrassed. Alara smiled. "Yes." She opened them slightly. The child's eyes widened. "Can you hear through them?" "I feel pressure and vibration through them." "Can you feel the shuttle?" "Right now." "That is amazing." The father gave Alara an apologetic look. "He asks everyone questions. That is how he learns." The child returned to the window. The woman beside Alara never looked up from her news feed. Nathan almost laughed. 3 weeks earlier, an entire passenger cabin had treated sitting beside Alara as a decision requiring calculation. Tonight, the person actually sitting beside her seemed more interested in local headlines. When the shuttle entered Concordia Central, Alara turned around. "You are smiling." Nathan shook his head. "No. Your face disagrees. Professional malfunction." Her biological markings brightened. She did not hesitate. Nathan glanced toward 7C. "No. She does not know what happened on the horizon veil. No. She does not know I found the vibration. Also no." Alara looked at the woman beside her, who was now packing away the news display. Then she had no reason. Nathan understood exactly what she meant. She had a seat. Alara became quiet. The shuttle docked. Restraints released. The woman stood, collected her work bag, and nodded politely to Alara. "Have a good evening." "You too." Then she disappeared into the crowd, without ever knowing she had done anything worth remembering. Alara remained seated for a moment. Nathan stepped into the aisle. "Coming." She stood. This time she did not check whether anyone was giving her space. She simply took the space she needed. They walked into Concordia Central together beneath warm transit lights and the low mechanical hum of evening traffic. "Coffee?" Nathan asked. "Again, our data remains inconclusive." "After 3 weeks?" "Scientific standards are brutal." Alara laughed and walked beside him. Behind them, new passengers entered the shuttle. Within minutes, 7C belonged to someone else. Nobody knew it had once represented anything. Nathan thought that might be the best evidence of change he had seen all month. Kindness had mattered when it was unusual. Acceptance mattered more when nobody noticed it happening. The next morning, Nathan stood beneath the departure lights at Concordia Central with his refrigeration tool case beside one boot and a return ticket glowing on his wrist terminal. His contract was finished. Alara's mapping assignment had ended the previous afternoon. For 3 weeks, they had turned coffee into a running experiment neither seemed interested in completing. Now their departures were separated by 40 minutes and several hundred light years of destination. Alara arrived carrying one compact travel bag. Her sapphire turquoise skin caught the pale terminal light, and the biological markings along her cheeks glowed softly. "You are early," she said. "Refrigeration engineers respect schedules. You arrived late to coffee 6 times. Coffee is not refrigeration. Convenient professional boundary." Nathan smiled. They boarded the same orbital shuttle toward the transfer ring. Alara's assignment was 7B again. Nathan checked his own. 8C. "The universe lacks imagination," he said. Alara took the window seat. This time, 7C was already occupied. A middle-aged passenger sat there reading a news display, one travel case tucked beneath his feet. He glanced up when Alara approached, moved his elbow from her half of the armrest, and returned to reading. "Morning," he said. "Good morning," Alara replied. That was all. Nathan stopped for barely a second before continuing to row 8. Nobody noticed. The passenger did not know about the horizon veil. He did not know about the refrigeration vibration. He did not know Alara was an acoustic cartographer or that she had crossed 11 systems, learning how quickly strangers could turn an empty seat into a boundary. He simply had 7C. She had 7B. The shuttle departed. Nathan watched through the gap between the seats as Alara settled comfortably beside the window. She did not pull her coat inward. She did not leave the armrest untouched. Her sensory membranes rested open along her temples. Halfway to the orbital ring, the passenger beside her asked whether she wanted the window shade lowered because sunlight had crossed her face. "Halfway, please," Alara said. He adjusted it halfway and returned to his news. Nathan looked out his own window and smiled. No lesson, no gratitude, no reason required. When the shuttle docked, Alara waited for Nathan near the transfer concourse. Their gates pointed in opposite directions. For once, neither made a joke immediately. So Alara said, "The coffee investigation remains unresolved." Severely. "That sounds professionally irresponsible. I may need additional samples." Her sensory membranes lifted. Concordia again someday? Or somewhere with worse coffee. That leaves most of the galaxy. Nathan laughed. A boarding announcement sounded for Alara's connection. Another followed for his. She looked toward her gate, then back at him. "Nathan." "Yes. The first time you sat beside me, everyone noticed." He nodded. "I noticed everyone noticing. Yesterday, that woman did not hesitate. No. Today, that man was already sitting there." Nathan glanced back toward the shuttle. New passengers were boarding now. Rows filled one by one. Nobody paused at 7C. "Better," he said. Alara's biological markings brightened. "Much better." Nathan lifted his tool case. "Safe trip. You too." She took several steps, then turned. "If we meet again, I am choosing the seat." "Fine, but I retain armrest treaty rights." "Interstellar treaty rights." "You are still editing that document." "Someone has to." She smiled and walked toward her gate. Nathan watched until the crowd folded around her silver-white hair and blue skin. Then he headed toward his own departure corridor. He thought about 24B on the horizon veil, about the passengers who had walked past it, about Alara making herself smaller against the window, about one shared armrest divided like disputed territory. Nathan had done almost nothing. He had sat where his ticket told him to sit. He had noticed when she was uncomfortable. He had believed her when she felt something wrong beneath the floor. Yet perhaps that was why the memory stayed with him. Kindness had not required him to understand her entire history. It had only required him not to treat her dignity as something she needed to earn. The first time Nathan sat beside the alien girl, an entire cabin noticed. 3 weeks later, nobody noticed the stranger who did the same. By the time they left Concordia, the empty seat had finally stopped being a symbol and become what it should have been all along. Just a seat.